Hi everyone. Let's go ahead and take a look at cracking open Adobe Animate. So in this first one, we're going to take a look really quickly at some of just the very basic beginning steps of opening it up. So you can see right now I've clicked on just Adobe Animate, the icon, this purple and black AN icon. And this is the first thing we get. When we first open up the program, on the left-hand side, you're going to give the option to create new or open. Now, to selecting open means you're going to want to open something you've previously done, but certainly that's not the case right now. So we're going to start off with create new. Now, you can go ahead and do a customize. If you wanted to go something full HD, that's for television, something for gaming, something for the computers for web, for iPad, Canvas, etc. So all these different sort of places where you can set up and create a shortcut to the type of file you want. But we're going to be certainly using just full HD. Okay, we're going to be going and creating something that's just for your internet web delivery. So we're going to go ahead and click on create new, which is going to be our preset. And once that opens up, we're going to go ahead and take a look at this window here, which is our new document window. From here we can fine tune where we go into social, gaming, education, ads, different kinds of templates for things we need. In this case, we're going to go ahead and stick with just our standard. We're going to click on standard here. Just click with that. It's a smaller file size. And our height and width, this is our height and width of our stage. In Adobe Animate, the place where we put our content is called the stage. Now our frame rate is 30 frames per second, and our platform is ActionScript 3.0. We don't need to change either of those. We keep that right there as a standard, especially the frame rate. The frame rate is set at 30 frames per second because that is your standard internet delivery. So all I have to do now is basically not messing with anything at all, except just clicking on standard. I'm going to go ahead and click create. Now when I do, here is my actual Animate window. Now this is the program opened up with all the tools and whistles. Now when you first open it, you'll notice that what we call the timeline, that's right here. This is where your content is placed in time along this line here so that it plays out sequentially in the program. We have on the left hand, we have our tools, and on the right side we have how to fine tune our tools. But one of the things we need to do with this program is that there are so many tools in this program that we need to fine tune it. And to fine tune it means we're going to take some of the tools and put some away and bring out the ones that we need as animators. Now you'll notice on the upper right hand side here, you'll see this little box right here that says workspaces. Well, I'm going to go ahead and click on that once. And now I can go ahead and preset it and take out the tools that an animator needs. So I'm going to open up right here where it says animator. I'm going to click on that and it's going to flip it and put all my tools where they need to be for an animator. So you'll notice my timeline is now on the top. I have more tools open on the left, and my toolbar is right here above me, right above here. And on the right side, I have all the properties. So when I select a tool, I can change the property of that tool, and I can go back in and sub-select and change the settings. We'll talk more about that in a minute. The image right here below, above, this is our timeline. Now the timeline, basically think of the timeline almost like a film strip. From an old-fashioned strip of film, and that each notch on the timeline represents a single notch of frame or image that would be on a strip of film. So you need to have images in all of the frames to be able to have your image play consistently on screen. Now let's talk a little about what's going to be here. Let's talk about sort of the simplest ways to maneuver around in this program. The stage, which is again the white area here, there are two simple commands that will help you to navigate very quickly in this program. There are long form ways to do things and short form ways to do things. In this case, for the short form, to go ahead and be able to move my stage left, right, up, down very quickly, is I simply hold the space bar. I've got it now, I've got it basically held in there. There's my space bar. And notice my icon here is turned into a hand. Then if I left click my mouse and move up, look at that. I left click and hold and release, and I can move it up or down. And then when I release the space bar, right, my icon goes back to normal, back to the arrow. So it's a quick, easy way, again, space bar and left click to move around and be able to move myself around in space, okay? The other quick way is to move around is to zoom in and zoom out. Now some folks might like to use the drop-down menu up here for percentages, where there it is 50%, there it is 100%, etc. Myself, I like to use the Command or Control key. Now, depending upon whether or not you have a Mac or PC, if you have a Mac, you have a Command key. If you have a PC, you have a Control key. In this case, I have a Mac I'm using today, so I'm going to hold Command and the plus or minus key simultaneously up on the keyboard. So Command and then plus, it zooms in. Command minus zooms out. See, I'm zooming out there, right there. And Command plus brings it in. So that's kind of a shortcut way to zoom in and zoom out. Likewise, moving these scroll bars here on the sides, on the side and the bottom, they're kind of awkward for moving the stage left and right. If you want to move it at a 45, the best way to do that, spacebar, left click. This is where you have that full control. All right, so again, spacebar full and left click will zoom, will move your stage around. And to zoom in and zoom out, well, that's going to be Control or Command key that you'll hold down, and then tap the plus or minus key on the keyboard, and that will allow you to zoom in and zoom out by increments very quickly. So you can basically see something you're doing. Now, that being said, that's kind of our quickie. Now let's talk about some of the tools that are up and around on the side here. On the left-hand side, we have our color picker where we can fine-tune colors. You'll notice we have basically like you have in Photoshop or After Effects or in Illustrator, you have a fill and a stroke. So the stroke is the pencil line, which means the outline of the object, and the fill is the paint bucket. Okay. Now we slow down, but below here we have our different swatches of color. We can go ahead and change our colors, and we can customize our color if we want to. If you go down below, this is our alignment tool. So when we bring something into stage, if we wanted to go to a certain spot, we have these different icons here to choose. But we'll talk more about that a bit later. Down below, we have the scene panel. The scene panel is if you have a movie and you have different scenes in a movie, like the opening scene, right, the middle part scene, and then you have the closing scene or title credits. Each one of these would get a different scene added to them. And the scene menu is this little tiny little box with a plus sign. And that means add scene, but we'll talk about that more in a little bit. So down below are motion presets. We'll get to those later. Along the top up here, along the peg strip here, we want to go ahead and we want to add our timeline peg strip here. We want to add in some information. So what is all of this up here? Well, this content that's right here pertains to what happens right here on the peg strip timeline here. So with this, what happens is this. This is layer 1. So I'm going to double click it and I'm going to say demo, D-E-M-O, just type it, click off to the side. Boom, that's all preset. Now, these icons above, these on the left will add and take away objects. This controls how the keyframe acts. So let's do this. On the first one right here on the left here, this is my new layer. You notice I hover over it, it says new layer. If I go to the next one over there, it says new folder. And next to that is the trash. So if I want to get rid of something, it's the trash. So I have to have that object selected, and then I can select one of these three, and I have those options. Now for the next ones that are here, really what I want to be focused on is the lock, the eyeball, and the outline mode. When we're working on something for lock, that's going to lock the layer. If I click that dot, see that I click that? Boom. If I click underneath the lock, underneath the eyeball, that hides anything that's there. And the outline mode is great if you're working on an object that's really dense and you can't see details and you want to be able to see it. A nice way to hide the fill and stroke and just have a nice single outline is to have this outline box selected. Now let's talk about the timeline itself. The timeline itself works in basically 30 frames per second. And you can see that there's a 1S, a 2S, a 3S, etc. It keeps going. Those are seconds. And then within that we have 30 frames at 1 second, 60 frames at 2 seconds, 90 frames at 3 seconds, etc. So you can see that we have that set up. Now, we have right now we have a blank keyframe on the timeline. So part of the language you're going to want to get used to is hearing the term keyframe, blank keyframe. Okay? A keyframe is nothing more than one of these notches on the timeline. It's blank, meaning like a blank piece of paper, or it has something on it. And that can be anything from a stroke, a paintbrush, it can be letter, a picture, whatever it happens to be. Anything that is a thing gets put onto the stage, and that becomes a fill on there. So let's take a look at our tools down here, and we'll talk about our tools, and then we can go on to start working with the timeline itself. So with the tools down below, we have the one arrow right here, which is our selection tool, and that allows us to select everything. Our free transform tool allows us to change size, scale, skew, and to change it. And we've seen that certainly in Illustrator or Adobe Animate, or After Effects or any other, or Photoshop, you've seen that. The next one certainly is the lasso tool. Sometimes we'll have objects that are tightly close together and we'll need to be able to work our way around those objects, so the lasso tool is very helpful. We also have our paint brushes. We have our fluid brush and our classic brush. The fluid brush allows you to go in and fine tune that with your Wacom tablet to have those subtle strokes that are going to have a nice fine tip on them, or apply different types of stroke types to it. Whereas the classic brush, it's just boom, it's a straight, simple brush. Let's go try that standard brush there. You notice when I clicked on that, let me click off it again here, back to the light arrow. Watch what happens on the right-hand side of the screen when I click on paintbrush. Look at that. My tools have changed here. That's because every time I click on a tool that's in here, it changes how the properties area is, so that I can go back in and refine some of the different presets on my tool. So let's say we got a paintbrush. I've got a fill on here, this color. I'm going to go ahead and change it to a nice bright color. And if I'm going to go back in, and once I make a squiggly line on the stage, you'll notice that this keyframe, which is blank, it's a hollow circle, will become a solid. 1, 2, 3. There's my line. Boom. You see how that turned into a solid black circle? That means there's a thing now on the artboard. So I just made a little squiggle. The next thing to do is I'm going to go ahead and I've got some presets here where I can change this up. Maybe I want to change the fill color. Oh, maybe I want to do red. And maybe I want the size of the stroke to change. I click on the size, take that up a little bit higher. Maybe I want to change how smooth that line is. Maybe I want that line to be really rough. So I'll take that down for smoothing. Now we're not going to worry about sync settings with stage or eraser. We're going to leave those alone right now. But if I go back over to the stage here and I make a real squiggly, kind of a really broken, jagged line there, notice that line stays almost exactly as I put it because I took the smoothing all the way down to 0. Let's take that smoothing and take it all the way up. And if I do the same thing on the line again, notice how it smoothed it out. It automatically smoothed those lines. There's not as many points. There's not as much jagged imagery. So changing that smoothing is really nice. The size you saw me change also. Now there's also some other basic brush options. In here I can change the scale of it, or that means, excuse me, the shape of it. In this case I'll go in with a paintbrush. And I can go ahead and go right down. Zoop. There's my paintbrush. I can change the size. Oh, there we go. The size again. Make it huge. Look at that. So I can keep going in here and changing all these different things in here. Pretty nice. But everything is still on one keyframe. It's just on keyframe number 1 on there. Let's say that if we think sequentially in terms of time, if I want what's on the artboard here to last for a second of time when I was to play this, well, I need to stretch this one keyframe out to last for 30 frames. Okay, so if I want to go ahead and extend this frame out, I've gone ahead and I've clicked on the keyframe at the 30-second mark, and now all I have to do is literally just go ahead and tap F5. So I'm going to tap the F5 key, 1, 2, 3. And F5 is that key at the top of your keyboard. That's all the F series keys. So I've got that selected. I notice now it's basically, here's my black dot of the original image, and here it is, it's being stretched out to last 30 seconds. So I want you to go ahead and try that on yours. Now I'm going to go ahead right now and insert another blank keyframe. Go right to the next spot, right click, and say Insert Blank Keyframe. And then I can go ahead and I can do a few more squiggles. There we go. And then I go to the 2-second mark and hit F5 and stretch that out. So I want you to go ahead and try that. See, if I grab the scrub bar and I go back and forth, I can see both keyframes on there lasting for a second. All right, go ahead and try that. And next video, we'll get more into the tools. Have fun.